Welcome back. You're watching Your World at 10. Now, Parkway Holdings is in the middle of what could potentially become a big bidding war for the control of that Singapore-based healthcare services company. On the one hand, you've got India's Fortis Healthcare, owned by the Singh brothers, Shivinder and Malvinder Singh. Fortis holds 25.3% in Parkway, a stake that it bought only recently, and Fortis has 4 directors on Parkway's 11-member board. Fortis also counts as its second largest shareholder, Singapore's sovereign wealth fund, GIC. GIC has a 6.5% stake in Fortis. On the other side, you've got Malaysia's sovereign fund Khazanah, which holds 23.3% in Parkway, and Khazanah has made an offer to expand that stake to 51%. Interestingly, Khazanah holds 12% in India-based Apollo Hospitals, which competes with Fortis in the healthcare space. So, is this going to become a big bidding war? Here's what members of both sides had to say today.
It's not a conversation that we can have at this time, or we're prepared to have, and we just want to leave it at that for right now. I think it'd be anything right now would be premature and probably inappropriate.
Khazanah is a shareholder in Apollo, and we do, as a shareholder, what Khazanah, I think, you know, we do support what they're doing in a sense, because we see a synergy in the creation of a new entity that they've done, which is completely dedicated to the healthcare space.
Well, to discuss this very interesting M&A situation building up, I have with me Hitesh Sharma, partner and leader of the life sciences practice at EY, and Sujoy Shetty, leader for pharmaceuticals in India at PricewaterhouseCoopers. So, Sujoy, Hitesh, thank you very much for joining me. Let's get the first issue out of the way, and that is, what is the likelihood of Fortis actually tendering in their shares to this Khazanah offer? And exiting an investment that they made just a few months ago, and that they have proclaimed is strategically very important for their global healthcare foray. You go first, Hitesh. Do you think that there's any chance at all?
Well, I don't think you can rule out any chance at all, but the way I look at it... Yeah, well, let me define the scenarios as I see it. I think the scenarios they have is, like you said, they can tender their shares itself. The second is they can do nothing and just stay as 26% minority shareholder.
We're assuming minority based on the fact that everybody, or all, you know, I mean, and that Khazanah will get to 51%.
Exactly.
We don't know if that's even going to happen.
Exactly, absolutely. Right. And the third scenario is they may actually counter bid itself and see if they want to be really in the game.
So what's the likelihood of the first scenario?
I think it's equal across. I think it's 33% chance.
There's a 33% chance?
And the reason I think about that is they've said it's strategic. Right. Remember, Khazanah is a financial investor, and yes, you did kind of articulate earlier that Apollo has mentioned they've backed it. Right. But a financial investor doesn't necessarily need to be tied up with just one player. So they may be very open in even having a strategic play with Fortis in that company. I don't think we can rule that out as an option. Yes, they're probably more aligned from what you said to Apollo, but I wouldn't rule that out with a financial investor.
So, Joy, do you agree with that, that there's a one-third chance that Fortis may actually tender in their shares? Is there any possibility of them striking any kind of alliance with Khazanah, or do you think that one of the other two options is more likely?
So, exactly as Hitesh said, never say never in M&A.
Right.
But at the price, so all three options are valid. But in the order of priority, I firstly think doing nothing, which is an option, will be difficult for them because they've just bought in and, you know, they've all these grand plans.
Right.
So being second best has no value in life. They may be a nuisance value with 26%, but that's the best they can hope with that situation. The second one up from there is tendering at this price. That's also unlikely to happen because it's very narrow to the price they paid for acquisition. Of course, if this turns out to be some kind of a crazy war where prices go escalating, many other shareholders join in the fray. Many other shareholders join in the fray, and, you know, it turns out to be some crazy battle where they get a big, huge, fat profit. Who knows? They may well see that as a very attractive option. And the third one, assuming, you know, that they were serious first time round when they said that they want to integrate this, be the largest operator outside Asia, then under the third option, they have a fight on their hands. So in terms of grading them, I think, you know, you have to expect that they would probably want to counter this as the heaviest of the chances, followed by selling out. And doing nothing would be a kind of a disaster. unless they have worked out some agreement to be the strategic operator of the combined entity.
All right, so let's assume that a competitive bid situation is exactly what will develop over the course of the next few weeks, with Fortis wanting to defend its position in Parkway as it is strategic to its global plans. So, Joy, how important an asset or how valuable an asset is Parkway, and really to what extent do you think that both these players, consider one is a strategic player, the other is a financial investor, though it does have a stake in Apollo, so that could make it strategic, but how important is Parkway and how far do you think this battle will go for this asset?
Difficult to say how far it will go till we start seeing Fortis open up its hand and see what they plan to do, vis-a-vis your question before. But Parkway is incredibly attractive, at least for Fortis, because that's their strategy. They alone amongst all, and if you look around the world, there are no pan-geographic operators. For a good reason, pan-geographic operators in healthcare don't make that much of a sense because of policies, health, access, affordability, pricing, 1,000 issues. Outside the US, you will never see a pan-geographic operator. Fortis somehow has managed to do that. So, Malvinder Singh had said, I'll give you 2 more brands in India, which will be bigger than Ranbaxy. So I suspect for Fortis, it's very, very important to control Parkway. Coming to Khazanah, well, they're financial, but they've almost approached it with a very long-term strategic vision. And most of these hospitals that are owned by this group are indeed in Malaysia. And they have very deep pockets. They are sovereign wealth fund whose cost of capital is very low. They're funded by the government. So in an all-out war, how much can the Singh brothers, let's not focus on them. Fortis as a company can raise opposite side to a company which has, potentially limitless capital is a bit of a situation that needs to be understood carefully as we go forward. And so that's what they're all weighing up, all these things.
Hitesh, what's your view on how important this asset is? And, okay, I'll ask the juicier question later on whether this is a sovereign wealth fund fight.
Right. So I think it's pretty strategic. I think Fortis has mentioned that. And I think Malvinder is amongst the few players who has an intent of trying to make it like a global business. And
a reasonably large war chest thanks to his Ranbaxy sellout to that extent. So.
Absolutely. And with even, it's not that he can't raise money through other...
So he already has, I think, roughly 7,000-8,000 crores. And, he can leverage that considerably if he does want to make this a big fight.
Absolutely.
Do you think he'll go down that road?
Like I said, I think he is going to look at it very seriously. I expect him to do that. Whether he counterbids or gets into a strategic alliance, I think he will look at all options.
Is this one of the few such assets available across the world, Parkway?
Very few, and it is one of the few which is available.
Right.
Not many groups which exist, which have multi-country operations available in the healthcare field.
All right, so I know you threw up the novel potential possibility of Khazanah with Apollo and Fortis all coming together if this becomes too expensive. But, if I was to romanticize this a bit and say that, is this a fight between two sovereign wealth funds? Because just recently we saw GIC become the second largest holder in Fortis, and that's the Singapore sovereign wealth fund. And now you've got Khazanah, making this a competitive bid situation. Both of them have strategic players on their side. So it's GIC and Fortis, Khazanah and Apollo. So this becomes an even more exciting all-out war with great amount of financial strengths as well as strategic ability.
Well, I agree. We can look at it in a romantic way in that form. But it comes on the backing of Singapore government and Malaysian government actually kind of having better bilateral ties. So I'm hoping that it doesn't get into a war of funds. But yes, I think both GIC and Khazanah are quite strategically involved in the healthcare industry. They have a strategic vision. So one can look at it as a war. The other is to say, okay, what are they going to do to help get this business to a global level that they envisage? At least Fortis is very clearly of the view. While Khazanah is, I don't know how much Apollo, while Apollo I think has made statements that they're backing it. Right. I don't know how much they are in the money in trying to make it a global business.
Okay, but the point I'm trying to make, and Sujoy, I'd like your response to this as well, that if shareholders of Parkway had to choose between either one of these offers and say, hey, listen, is this a financial investor? Is this a strategic investor? Where does the interest of the company, that is Parkway, lie? You've got both on both hands, right? Like I said, GIC, financial, Fortis, strategic, Khazanah, financial, and Apollo, to that extent, strategic. So which way do you think, if at all, shareholders will go? Will this become an all-out war?
I guess nobody can tell at the moment. Everybody's weighing up their options. But remember, if you look parallelly, not just this instant, but if I were to look at Sun and Taro, for example, out of India, it's hard to know what the other shareholders will do. There are a lot of them. There are 2 or 3 financial investors there,
yes,
who may have their own stakes and their views. And obviously, everybody will try to profit from the situation. This is a situation, and somebody needs to profit from it. I don't think at this price a lot is going to happen. I mean, I'm just speaking, this is purely my personal opinion, because in an M&A war, this is the opening salvo. There are savvy financial investors invested into Parkway. I would expect everybody would start jockeying for position to see how they can maximize their profits out of this. So, we'll have to wait for a while and see how this whole thing develops and increase and offers and so many other things, bids and counter strategies that now yet to play out.
Sujoy, are we at any point, am I missing out the chance or the possibility of someone else jumping into this fray?
It is possible. It is possible. I mean, this is now firmly in play, and there is a possibility that can also happen.
Okay. Do you think that's a likelihood?
There are already two.
There are already two very strong players. Yes, I understand.
Yeah, strong incumbents.
I mean, if this is an asset now in play, then is there a chance, Hitesh, that there could be a third person jumping in?
I see that possibility extremely low.
Okay.
Like you say, in an M&A, you can't rule out anything, but I see it extremely low because as I understand under Singapore laws, 30% is the threshold that once you acquire, you need to go for an all-out, complete takeover kind of offer. Parkway, if you look at the current offer of Khazanah,
it's a full tender offer that you have to make. After 30%, you have to offer.
You have the choice. You have the choice of making a full tender offer, and then it can get compulsory under the laws of Singapore, as I understand.
Okay.
But if you look at Khazanah has chosen to just take their stake to 51%. That's a partial offer
that they're going for. Right? I mean, they don't need to own more than that. That's a controlling stake.
But equally, what they are saying is they would want to keep the company floating on the stock exchange.
Right.
Which means, yes, their intent is strategic, get control over the business, but keep the liquidity factor there. So to that extent, saying that, okay, will another fund come in? I think it's really going to be a fight between these two if it develops into a fight, or you'll probably have Khazanah taking it to 51% from the shareholders if the shareholders do bid. And if I look at it, there is a 10% premium to Fortis's price, but based on the current price, it's almost a 30% premium.
Right.
So to that extent, it's not bad for the current shareholders, and they can still kind of be invested, being part of the minority shares and listed on the stock exchange.
All right, Hitesh, Sujoy, thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure this is only the first round in many more discussions to come on this very interesting M&A situation that seems to be building up. Remember, we've already described to you the strengths on both sides. Let's see how this pans out over the course of the next few weeks. With that, we need to take a quick break on Your World at 10.